I'm Feld, and welcome to our Growing Old Without Growing Broke, Without Going Broke. We're going to talk about a bunch of different things tonight, but I should have you all on mute. And so if you're not on mute, please stay on mute so that we can have everybody listening to me at the same time.
You're on mute, Tony.
Ellen's.
Tony, you're on mute. Why'd you sit there if you don't know what you're doing?
Okay, excuse us a second. I don't know why she's, get rid of Ellen. Okay, so we're going to talk about a few things today. First of all, we're going to talk about the reasons people come in to see an elder law attorney, why it's so important for you to do long-term care planning. We are going to talk a little bit about the important documents that you need. So we're not going to do a whole lot of talking about estate planning, but we are going to talk about some very important documents that are needed when we do long-term care planning. And then, of course, the most important thing is how are we going to pay for the costs of long-term care. So let me tell you a little bit about me. If you know me, you may know the people in this picture. On the right is me and a client. I just like that picture because we sort of looked like we were matching each other. But on the left is my son, Danny, wearing my father's World War II uniform. And it's one of my favorite pictures. It also reminds me to tell you that my husband and I were also caregivers. We were caregivers for his parents. We were caregivers for my parents, all four of them. So I know what it's like to be an elder law attorney and be on this side. I also know what it's like to be on the other side. I started by practicing traditional estate planning in West Broward 30 years ago or so. And a lot of people would come to me and they would ask me questions about paying for nursing home care for a spouse or how they paid for the cost of long-term care. And I didn't know anything about it. So I called somebody in Deerfield Beach who was active in elder law. And he taught me everything I know, as they say. His name was Jerry Solkoff, and he was unbelievably generous in teaching me. And I went on, of course, to learn from others, and laws changed or whatever. But then I went on to become an expert in using veterans benefits for long-term care. And so I gave back and shared that with hundreds and thousands of elder law attorneys. So my goal tonight is for you to learn something that you didn't know, but also for you to learn something you didn't know, something you hadn't even thought of that you didn't know. Because one of my favorite expressions is that people don't know what they don't know. So clients will often say to me, I didn't know that, but they'll also say to me things like, I didn't think of that. And that's really where our expertise comes in, is we're going to think of the things that you might not have even thought of yourself. So why are you here? Well, it's usually one of these reasons. Sometimes we're here for our parents. We want them to plan ahead, make sure they're taken care of. Especially if you've seen a family member or a friend go through some kind of long-term care hell, then you want to make sure you're prepared or your family is prepared. Sometimes you may have noticed that there's some changes in your physical or mental health, and you're concerned about what the future holds, and you go, can't put this off anymore, need to take care of it. I mean, I didn't put COVID in here, but obviously COVID has played a part in everybody's thinking about their mortality and making sure that they get their stuff done. But it was just as important before, because really any of us can go at any time and anything can happen at any time. So obviously, are we concerned about what happens if I'm sick or I die? One of the ones that's hardest is when there's a crisis in a family. We really encourage our clients to come in before there's a crisis, but often there's a crisis. Somebody may have had a stroke or a fall and they're in the hospital and they don't think they're going to ever be able to come home again. And now what do we do? So that's not an uncommon situation. In fact, it's a common situation. And of course, the obvious one is I want to leave an inheritance for my family, and I don't want to spend down all my hard-earned savings on the last few years of my life for paying for long-term care costs. So here is my elder care journey. I look at it as 4 steps. So we have a healthy, vigorous senior or boomer, first step. This is me or my friends or my husband, where if we have an issue, it's probably going to be covered by Medicare. We maybe need a hospital stay for a couple of days or some tests, or maybe a hip replacement, or maybe even a pacemaker, maybe even a $100,000 pacemaker, which is what they cost. Medicare is going to pay for all of that. So right here we call Medicare Cares. We have very little private pay. But as we become a declining senior or a fragile senior where we need either care at home or care in some kind of a community, Medicare doesn't care that you could have had a pacemaker for $100,000. They're not going to pay 1 cent for a care in your home for you to have an aid. That's just the system we're in, and it's never going to change. So that's when Medicare stops caring. And that's when we need to either have our own long-term care insurance or lots of our own money, or we need to get Medicaid or veterans benefits. And as we get more fragile, of course, the payment gets more and more. Excuse me just a moment. And then, of course, our final journey on the elder care journey is death. And I've had clients say to me, well, I'll be dead and I don't care. And boy, you don't want to be one of those people. You want to not leave a mess for your family. And I can't begin to tell you the messes I've unmessed over the years. I mean, quickly give you one now. I have a man whose mother left a condo in Sunrise Lakes. So we're not talking about a very expensive condo, maybe worth, let's say it's worth $80,000. Half to one son, half to the other son. They never bothered to move each of their halves into their own trusts or their, whatever. So now one of the brothers has died. And I need to do a probate on the one who died. So he owns half. So that's a probate on $40,000. But wait, it gets better, because guess what? This guy was a New York resident. So I have to do a probate in New York and in Florida for maybe a $40,000 piece of real estate. Half of that's going to go to attorney's fees. So you don't want to be this family who doesn't take care of their family before they pass away. It's just as important as taking care of yourself. So why should you be concerned about long-term care planning, or like we call it longevity estate planning? Well, I'm a history person, and I don't know how much of you know, but FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, died at 63 years old from complications from high blood pressure. I would imagine most of you don't think that that would happen today. Basically, they could not get his blood pressure down, and he ended up with congestive heart failure and died at 63. LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, he died at 64. Similar heart conditions that would never be in play in today's world. So we're living much longer. And if you look at their pictures when they died, they look 20 years older. Compare that to Jimmy Carter, who may not be doing too good right now, but he's 90 million years old, 98 is he, or whatever. And he looks pretty good for 98, and he's doing pretty good for 98. So we're living longer. And if we're living longer, then we have to have the funds to do that. I don't know how many of you plan on moving in with your kids, and I don't know how many of you plan on having your kids move in with you. But when I ask that question at seminars, I don't get a lot of people who are jumping at those thoughts. It happens, and sometimes it works. But for the most part, people don't want to do that. And for the most part, we all know somebody who's lived in a long-term care facility or has had somebody at home taking care of them. So just a little food for thought. Our life expectancies, as I said, are growing. A baby boomer who's 65 years of age now is going to live probably almost another 20 years and maybe longer. The cost of care is exorbitant, $5,000 to $12,000 a month. And then baby boomers have some special considerations. They have less savings. They have a higher standard of living. Let's face it, I don't live the way my parents lived. They therefore are delaying retirement. And a lot of their money is in 401ks and IRAs, which makes it a lot harder to do advanced planning. Not impossible, but it makes it a little harder. And then there's multiple marriages and multiple families. So the planning we're doing from my age group and older is very different from the planning I did for my parents, the greatest generation, where everybody was married and they had 2.3 kids. Those days are gone. So it's a little bit different for baby boomers. So where would we receive care if we needed care? Well, obviously in our home, sometimes with a family member, sometimes with friends, sometimes with an aide. There's adult daycare. I want you to think of that if that's ever necessary. Sometimes a person's spouse might spend the day at a adult daycare center where they would participate in activities that were good for them. They would eat lunch and breakfast, dinner, or whatever, and really have quality of life rather than staying home all day with their spouse or their child. Then we have the independent living facilities, which are not as independent as they used to be. They're sort of the way we used to think of assisted living facilities. People stay in them, you need to be independent, but you can also be independent with an aide full time. So they're not necessarily independent the way we might think of it. They're sort of like assisted living, and assisted living is now higher levels of care than we used to think of them. People can stay in assisted living facilities now very much until the end of their lives. The problem is that Medicaid will only pay for the cost of a nursing home. They'll pay very little for assisted living. So the choices of where people go sometimes is based on also the financing. Now, again, I know the nursing homes have been in the papers, and I know nobody wants to go in a nursing home. Nobody ever did before COVID. And this too shall pass. We don't take any options off the table because sometimes the only options we have are nursing homes or assisted living facilities or whatever, because we simply need a level of care that it can't be provided someplace else. So not to worry. This was a situation that got thrown on to nursing homes, and I don't think is going to be there forever. I have a client who's been in a nursing home for 15 years, and she's still kicking, and she didn't get COVID. She's got a little dementia now, but after 15 years, that's not too bad. So I love this picture. This is a great picture. I'm never going to need long-term care, and maybe this lady doesn't because she's smoking a cigarette and lighting it on her birthday cake, which says she's 100 years old. So we're going to live a long time, and this lady certainly has. But there are some inconvenient truths. 70% of us are going to need some kind of long-term care during our lifetime. Over 40% of us are going to need rehabilitation. I don't know too many people who get away without needing some care at home, unless they're lucky enough and they just really die in their sleep. And that unfortunately doesn't happen all that often anymore. And the cost of an aide is very high. And again, all of you have known people who've had an aide in their house. And the way you know that the need for aides in the home is growing is that home health agencies are one of the fastest growing franchises in our country. So the need for home health aides is out there, and that's because we're getting older and we need more help. And as I said, everybody knows somebody who's needed an aide. So we're going to talk about how we pay for long-term care in just a minute or two, but if you take away nothing from this talk, it's what I'm about to say to you now. And for those of you who are clients with my office, you know that when you come in, we want to get the advance directives done first. We want your powers of attorney, your healthcare surrogates, and your living will done. Because without these documents, nobody can make decisions for you. Not your kid, not your spouse, not nobody. And just because the assisted living facility lets somebody make a decision doesn't mean that that's the way it works. Nobody is legally allowed to make decisions for you. And if you don't have these documents in place and decisions need to be made for you. Let's say you have a car accident and you're unconscious, it's going to have to be a guardian appointed for you. And that's a court proceeding that costs money and is time consuming. And I call it quicksand. Once you're in it, you never get out. So please get these documents done. They're not forms. We're not going to buy these in Office Depot. They are very specific in Florida. The law changed in 2011. They are very specific. There must be specific language in them. The healthcare surrogate changed in 2015. The law change wasn't as significant, but nonetheless, you want to have documents that nobody's going to question and everybody's going to take. It's the most important thing you can do, seriously, for your family. I can't tell you how many people, again, come into my office. Mom just had a stroke, and now it's too late. Now mom's not competent to do documents. So these must be done for everybody over the age of 18. And if you have a kid in college, we do them for free. I like to tell the story, well, I don't like the story, but when Virginia Tech had the school shooting, parents would call up and they would want information about their kids, and the school wouldn't give them any information because these kids were adults. And even if you pay the tuition and your kid has the mental, maturity of an 8-year-old, they're still not going to give you the information because you have no power of attorney on file. So I'm pretty sure my kid was the only kid that had a power of attorney on file in any of the colleges in this country. But it's very, very important that everyone over the age of 18 have them. So there are more than 5 ways we pay for long-term care, but the most popular are the ones that we're going to talk about. The first is traditional long-term care insurance. I have traditional long-term care insurance, but I've had it for almost 20 years. It's like homeowners or car insurance. You either use it or lose it. It's expensive, rates go up, but it's more comprehensive than the things we're going to talk about later. And I have it because I sit here and I know what can happen to people. And after my in-laws passed away, my husband insisted that we got long-term care insurance, and we have phenomenal policies. Everyone who's seen them says, don't give these up, and we won't, but they cost a lot of money every year. But we're keeping them because we know how quickly you can spend a ton of money on long-term care. Okay, so Medicare. Medicare is not going to pay for your long-term care. It's only going to pay up to 100 days in a skilled nursing facility if you need rehab, and it must be followed by a 3-day stay in the hospital. Now, the 3-day stay in the hospital can be an issue. You must be admitted to the hospital. It can't be that you're under observation, and you won't know by the room you're in or the care you're getting. You will have no idea whether you've been admitted or you're only under observation. But that's a little trick that they pull. So you must ask if there's any chance that you're going to need to go into rehabilitation after. I need to be admitted because I need to have my 72 hours so that I can get Medicare to pay for my rehabilitation. Medicare will pay the first 120 days, the first 20 days full, and then there's a copay of 176 for the next 80. Medicaid sometimes pays that, sometimes our own Medigap or our own Medicare supplement will pay for it. Sometimes long-term care insurance policies will pay for it too. But again, it's only up to 100 days. Not everybody gets 100 days. Depends on whether we're improving and doing the work and whatever. So private pay. So let's say an average of the private pay is $60,000 a year with AIDS. I don't even know what the number is. I don't know that there's too many people who can afford to pay $60,000 a year for a full-time aide. Think about what money you have right now and which money you would use first to pay for the cost of care. It's not a very pleasant thought. Most people can't afford it. And most of our brokers and financial planners, their goal is to grow your money. And that's fine. But my goal is for after you've grown it, for it not to disappear in 3 years after you get sick. No matter how much, unless you have wealth, you're not going to earn $84,000 a year on your investments. It's just not going to happen. So most of us have not worked our whole life to use it up to pay for long-term care. Medicaid is a primary payer of nursing home, and it does pay a small part of home care or assisted living. There are income and asset tests. There's more misinformation about Medicaid than probably anything I've ever worked with before. What elder law attorneys do is we apply for Medicaid for clients, but more importantly, we plan for the possibility that somebody may need Medicaid down the road. And so the earlier we plan, the better off we are, because some of the planning requires it to be done 5 years in advance with trusts and things like that. We do nothing, we don't hide anything in the mattress, we don't do anything that's even remotely illegal. Every tool we use to shelter assets and make people eligible for Medicaid are perfectly legal, right there in the Medicaid manual for anybody to see. But again, some of them need to be done in advance, and they need to be done while we're healthy and can sign documents and do other things. So if we need to pre-plan for Medicaid, and many people do, then we need to come in. So the last thing I want to talk to you about is a fairly new way that we pay for long-term care. And I really call this private pay and self-insuring, because really you're taking your own money and you're just really repositioning it in such a way as to create a stream of money for your long-term care. So in 2010, the government created these hybrid policies. Basically, they're annuities or they're life insurance policies that also provide a stream of money for long-term care. They are, again, just annuities and life insurance policies, vehicles that you are familiar with. Sometimes it's a life insurance policy, sometimes it's an annuity, sometimes it's a combination of both. It's not like traditional long-term care insurance where you use it or lose it. If you already have an annuity or an existing insurance policy, you can switch them on a tax-free basis. I'm not a tax attorney, but it's called a 1099 exchange. And really what we're doing is restructuring our assets so that we have a stream of income to pay for our long-term care costs. And whether we can use our IRAs for this, our 401ks, or we can do it with cash. And again, typically the vehicles are annuities, life insurance, or a combination of both. The government did this because the government knows that we are not going to be able to pay for our own care unless it provides us with some vehicles to self-insure. You already heard that Medicare is not going to cover you. Medicaid, government doesn't want Medicaid to run out of money or to have to eliminate Medicaid. So this is what the government is doing to help you take care of yourself. One of my favorite sayings is something that Rosalind Carter said. There are 4 types of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who need caregivers. And in my world, that surely is the case. Okay, stop share. Yeah. Hi. So we're going to go off the slides a little bit. So why would you want to come into our office and work with us? Well, I've been practicing for 30 years or more. I'm AV rated by Martindale-Hubbell. I'm board certified by the ABA. I have a great staff. Tracy's been with me for more than 10 years. Sharon, I think 6 or 7. Ryan, our tech person, has been with us for a bunch of years when he's not in college. We're nice and relaxed, comfortable place to work. Just so you know, everything that we do, we focus on traditional estate planning, long-term care planning, which is what we were talking about. We do Medicaid benefits and veterans benefits and the pre-planning for those as well. If somebody passes away, a large portion of our practice, unfortunately, is trust administration or probates, which if you've come to us, you hopefully won't have a probate, but other people do. So we do probate proceedings. We will keep you posted about changes in the law as from our blogs. So you will get blogs from us if we have your email addresses, and you'll get notice about what's going on. And we also like to work with your financial advisor, long-term care planner, whoever's in part of your team, so that everybody's on the same page. And I don't have the doctor saying one thing and the patient advocate saying another thing and the financial planner saying something else, because honestly, there's so much misinformation about this out there that it can be really scary to hear some of the things that people will say to me. So what are you going to do now? Well, we're going to email you an evaluation sheet, and we're going to ask you to evaluate our seminar. And if you'd like us to call you to set up a consultation, we will be more than happy to do that. Otherwise, you can call our office. But I think there's a box on there that says call me for our free consultation. Since you've been to the seminar, the first meeting is on the phone and it's free. And that's when we kind of assess whether we can help you, or whether we're a good fit, or whether we think that you will work well in our office. We're going to send you a questionnaire, of course. We're going to ask you for all kinds of documents. We don't ask you for something that we don't need, but we do make sure that we cover everything, because we want to know really what's keeping you up at night. And we want to protect those assets. And we can't do that without you providing us all the information. And every family is different. So we have to plan for every family differently. People call me and they say they want a will. I say, that's like calling your doctor and saying, give me blood pressure medication. It doesn't work like that. We can't just throw documents at somebody. We have to know what they're trying to accomplish and all of their, the family information. One of the reasons people hesitate sometimes to come in is because they think it's going to be very complicated. And I want you to know that we do the complicated. You don't do the complicated. So if something is complicated, we're going to explain it to you, so it's not going to be complicated. You're going to understand everything you need to do and have to do, and leave the complexities to us. It'll be understandable, it'll be simple, it'll be direct. Okay. Oh, I'm so proud of myself. Okay, so the next step, you've attended the seminar, you're going to either call us or you're going to write on the evaluation that you'd like the free teleconference. And then we have design meetings and review meetings, and then we sign documents. Sometimes it's not over at signing documents. Sometimes we have to, what we call fund trusts, but we are very conscious of COVID. We see very few people in our office now. Almost everything is teleconference or Zoom or just telephone. At the beginning, we would do what we call drive-by signings. But what we do now is either we'll do a form of our drive-by signing so that everyone's safe, or you can come in our office in Coral Springs, and we have a pretty big conference room, and you can sit at one end and we'll flag everything that needs to be signed so we don't have to come near you. And then you give it back and we'll, witness and do everything that needs to be done to us. So we're going to keep you safe as possible. We're certainly not going to put any of our clients at risk. So now I'm going to open up the floor for questions. And what I'm going to ask you to do is at the bottom of your sheet, something where you can tell me. Done pretty good. So at the bottom, you're going to see it says chat. And if you have a question, just type it in and I'll be happy to answer it. Kathy said, sorry, she was late. Sue said hello. Gina said hello. So yes, Kathy, let's catch up. I'd love to see you. Any questions? Type them in on the bottom. Everybody always has lots of questions. No questions. That'd be a first. Give it another minute or so, because I know most people are not used to finding this chat thing. It's at the bottom under my picture. Not all the way at the bottom, but under my picture, if you're taking your mouse and scrolling it around, it's gonna be right in the middle and it says chat. Okay. Thank you. As I sort of said before, I have a lot of relationships with allied professionals. So not only will I work with your allied professionals, but if you need somebody, if you need information on preparing a funeral, or if you need information on having a care manager, or resources in the community, or any of the things, millions of things, I know everybody. I mean, I don't know everybody, but I have resources all through the county and all through both counties, really Broward and Dade County, to point you in the direction of getting information that you may need that isn't something I necessarily can help you with, but that you should be getting yourself. So if you need to find out where there's a senior center, or where there's a adult daycare, or what's available from the counties, I'll point you in the right direction on how to find out all the information that you may have difficulty finding yourself. So in addition to anything else we do, we have relationships with everyone, and we can get everything that you need done in an expeditious manner. The other thing somebody just mentioned is my documents are old. What do I do? Yes, you need to come in and review them, especially if they're from another state. Like everything else, if you in 10 years, you're 10 years older, the laws are 10 years older, things have changed. Who's sitting here would have thought in January while we were watching the Super Bowl that I would be, first time I'm not wearing a mask and I'm sitting like 4 feet from somebody who's very trustworthy. The world changes, and if you've got documents and they're good, they've been prepared by a competent elder law attorney, and they were done after the changes in law, fine. But I find very often that people's documents, especially those powers of attorney, are not good, that there's been changes in people's lives, that there's been changes in the laws. So certainly come in and let us review what you have. I promise we're not going to do anything we don't need to do, but typically updating our documents is important. Also, if you have any veterans in your lives, we didn't spend a lot of time on it because there's not so many veterans, but if you're a veteran or you have you're a surviving spouse of a veteran, there may be some long-term care benefits that we can get for you. So please see us about that too, because that's something I know a lot about, as I said to you at the beginning. We're not unmuting people because we're not unmuting them. This is my first time at this, and we made a conscious decision that we're not unmuting, so that the questions were going to have to be written. When I get good at this, we'll unmute. So if there's any questions, we're going to have you type them out. And of course, just call and we'll talk to you about any of the things that you're concerned about. We'll just, we'll set that phone appointment for you. Anything else? Okay, then. Thank you again. I'm shocked myself when I can do this. Thank you again for coming. You're going to, again, get that evaluation in the mail, so please fill it out. Any questions I didn't answer for you today, we'll be happy to answer at that initial free phone conference. Stay well, stay safe, and we're going to be having more of these, and we will let you know about them. So take care now.